Maybe try renting, Dad said, sliding my coffee back like I couldn't be trusted with a full cup. My sister, Lila, smirked. Honestly, Rowan, you're not house material. Mom and Dad helped me with $12,000 because I actually have a plan. Mom added, almost sweet, be realistic, honey. Dreamers end up evicted. Their voices pressed on my ribs like a seatbelt that wouldn't click. I swallowed hard and stared at the condensation ring my cup had left on the table, an outline of what they thought I deserved, temporary, damp, already fading. The kitchen smelled like lemon cleaner and Sunday pancakes. The light kept stuttering through the blinds, striping the countertop in little prison bars. HY everyone, my name is Rowan Hale, I'm 28. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. What kind of parent teaches you to shrink to fit their budget for love? I let the question float while Lila unfolded a glossy brochure. See? The backyard faces west, great for sunsets. With the down payment, we can close in 2 weeks. Her manicure flashed like tiny signals. Mine, mine, mine. Dad nodded, proud. Mom clasped her hands as if she were blessing a union. They didn't ask about my job. They didn't ask about the raise I hadn't told them about. They didn't ask why the bank manager called me Ms. Hale with a warmth that didn't come from a waiting room heater. Renting is safe, Mom repeated. Commitment is for people who can carry it. I smiled, small enough to pass inspection. Copy that. The kettle clicked off. Somewhere deep in the house, the old vents sighed. I trained my breathing to match them, low, steady, invisible. Lila's brochure fluttered as she pointed to the living room windows, already picturing her couch, her rug, her parties with glasses chiming against a view she didn't earn. The lemon light cut across her cheekbones. For a moment, she looked like the statue my parents had polished since childhood. Anyway, Dad said, pushing the conversation shut, we'll help you find something affordable. Tiny, but cute. I traced the water ring with one finger, then lifted my hand and left no mark. That's thoughtful, I said, and stood. The chair legs made a clean, patient sound against the tile, like a pen drawing a final line. On the way out, my phone buzzed. Realtor, 5th set of keys ready for pickup. Want me to courier the packet to your LLC address? The word keys pressed warm against my palm. In the lemon-bright kitchen, rent was a script written for me by people who loved ceilings more than daughters. In my pocket, another ending waited, quiet as a doorknob at midnight, certain as a lock that already knew my name. I turned back, smiled wider, and said nothing at all. The day after that breakfast, I drove past Lila's soon-to-be dream home. It sat between 2 half-finished lots, surrounded by scaffolding and mud, a palace built on loans and love from other people's wallets. She stood outside with Mom, pointing at the sky like she'd bought the clouds too. I didn't stop. I had a meeting downtown, not in some glass tower, but in an old brick office that still smelled of fresh paint and ambition. My realtor slid a folder across the table. Property number 5 officially closed this morning. Congratulations, Ms. Hale. It still startled me when people said my name with respect. Maybe because for years, I'd been trained to shrink every success into silence. My first property had been a 600-square-foot apartment with creaking pipes. I remember signing those papers alone, my hands trembling, not because of fear, but because nobody had clapped. The second one came after a promotion I didn't tell anyone about. The third, a fixer-upper in a forgotten neighborhood. By the fourth, I'd stopped needing permission. By the fifth, I'd stopped needing applause. That afternoon, Mom called. Honey, can you lend us your truck? Lila's moving furniture. Her voice had that casual tone that hides expectation. Sorry, it's in use, I said. Pause. You don't even have a house, she snapped. Why do you need a truck? I smiled into the phone, watching the sunlight pour across the wooden floors of my latest purchase, a quiet duplex with ivy crawling over its brick. Storage, I replied. Lila texted minutes later, you could have helped. Family helps family. I typed back, exactly. Then deleted it. Outside, a gust of wind rattled the ivy leaves against the window. The sound reminded me of applause, small, private, persistent. I wasn't the girl left out of house plans anymore. I was the landlord of my own silence. Still, as the sun dipped behind the ivy, one thought flickered like a warning light. Mom always loved Googling people who made her feel small. And I'd just signed my 5th deed, under my full, searchable name. By the end of that week, I started noticing missed calls from Mom, 5, then 10, then 15. She rarely called that much unless someone had died or embarrassed her. When I finally answered, her voice came wrapped in forced calm. "Rowan," she said, too evenly, "why is your name showing up on Zillow?" I froze mid-sip of my tea. The steam fogged my glasses. Through it, I saw the reflection of my own mouth curve upward. "You've been Googling me?" I asked lightly. "Well, Lila was looking at listings, and your name came up as owner on multiple properties. That must be an error, right?" I let the silence stretch. The ticking clock behind me sounded like an applause I didn't ask for. "No," I said. "No error." Mom's inhale was sharp enough to cut glass. Her voice dropped into a whisper. "You bought 5 houses." "Technically, 4 and a duplex," I corrected. On the other end, I heard Dad's muffled voice, "She what?" And a shuffle as Mom probably put the call on speaker. "Rowan," he said, his tone already bruised with disbelief, "how? You can't even afford coffee." I finished. "I remember." The line went silent except for their shallow breathing. For the first time in years, I didn't rush to fill it. I let the weight of their surprise hang there, honest and deserved. Then Mom found her footing. "You should have told us. We could have helped you invest properly, manage things." I laughed. "Helped? Like you helped with my down payment." She didn't answer. The air filled with the distant clatter of her kitchen, a spoon hitting a counter, a chair shifting. Maybe she was realizing the symmetry. She'd given Lila money to build an illusion. I'd built my peace in silence. "Anyway," I said softly, "don't worry about it. You've got Lila's house to think about." As I hung up, my reflection in the darkened window looked unfamiliar, calm, still, unrecognizable to the girl who once waited for permission to dream. Outside, the city lights flickered like blinking eyes. And somewhere, I knew, Mom was staring at her screen, watching my name multiply like proof she never saw coming. The next morning, I woke up to chaos, not in my home, but in the family group chat. "Mom, Rowan, your father and I are disappointed." "Dad, we deserve to know about this. Family doesn't hide." "Lila, so that's why you never came to see my house? You were competing." Competing. The word tasted like ash. I set my phone down beside the open window, where the air smelled like rain and brick dust. My duplex renovation crew was hammering downstairs. Real people, real work, real results. No trust funds. No pity money. Just sweat, signatures, and silence. Then the phone buzzed again. "Lila, it's not fair. You let Mom and Dad think you were struggling." I replied before I could stop myself. They never asked. They preferred that version." The typing bubbles appeared. Then vanished. I went downstairs to check on the workers. The foreman, a kind man named Javier, nodded toward the polished staircase. "Almost done, Ms. Hale. You've got a real eye for detail." Funny. I'd spent most of my life being told I had too much imagination and not enough sense. Now those same traits had built me equity. At noon, Mom showed up unannounced. She stood in the doorway, rain on her coat, confusion in her eyes. "You really bought this?" I gestured for her to come in. She didn't move. Her gaze swept over the newly painted walls, the faint echo of power tools. "You used to call me before making big decisions." "That was before my big decisions needed your approval," I said quietly. Her lips pressed together. "You've changed." "No," I said, watching a drop of rain slide down her collar. "You just stopped recognizing me when I stopped needing you." For a heartbeat, neither of us spoke. Then she glanced at the blueprint on the table, 5 property addresses inked in neat black lines, and whispered, almost to herself, "Your father's going to lose his mind." I smiled faintly. He already did, the day he believed I'd stay small forever. Her hand trembled on the doorframe. She didn't say goodbye, just left. Behind her, the scent of rain and lemon cleaner lingered, the past trying and failing to make itself at home. That evening, I sat by the window, watching headlights smear across the wet street like silver brushstrokes. My phone kept buzzing, Mom again, then Dad, then finally Lila. I ignored them all. But when Lila's message preview flashed, I couldn't help but read it. Lila, so now you think you're better than us? Lila, Mom's crying. You could have shared your success instead of hiding it. I almost laughed. Shared it. Like a charity they forgot to apply for. I closed my phone, but guilt, that old, obedient ghost, hovered at the edge of my mind. 4 years, I'd fought to earn their love, mistaking validation for affection. Now I had more than I ever thought possible, and less family than I'd started with. At midnight, I drove to one of my properties, the first apartment I ever bought. It was small, barely 2 rooms, but it still smelled faintly of paint and victory. I ran my fingers along the wall, remembering the night I'd signed the lease with trembling hands, whispering, I did this. My reflection in the dark window looked older, steadier. The silence there was different, not lonely, but earned. The next morning, my phone rang again. This time, it was Dad. Rowan, he began, his voice measured, like he was trying to sound calm. Your mother and I discussed it. You've clearly been successful, and would like your advice on some investments. I let out a slow breath, staring at the morning light spilling through the blinds. You mean my money, I said quietly. That's not what I. It's exactly what you mean, I cut in. When Lila got $12,000, it was help. When I earned everything myself, it's luck. He went silent. Rowan, he finally muttered, we're family. We can still. No, I said gently, almost kindly. We could have, but you spent that chance on someone else's mortgage. Before he could respond, I ended the call. For a while, I just sat there, watching the city wake up. For the first time in my life, I realized, peace isn't loud. It's the quiet after you stop explaining yourself to people who never really listened. 2 days later, Mom showed up again, this time with Lila in tow. They didn't call, didn't text, just arrived in their usual storm of perfume, judgment, and entitlement. Lila stepped inside first, scanning the duplex like she was touring it for sale. So this is what you were hiding, she said, brushing her fingers over the marble counter. Cute. I thought it'd be bigger. I smiled politely. You said that about my life once too. Mom gave her a warning glance, then turned to me. Rowan, this has gone too far. You embarrassed us. Your name is all over town. People are asking how our daughter owns half the block. That must be hard, I said softly. All that explaining. She ignored the jab. You could have told us before the neighborhood found out. It makes us look uninformed. I offered. Maybe because you were. Lila crossed her arms. You think this makes you better than everyone? Owning a few houses. No, I said, steady. It makes me someone who stopped waiting for your permission. For a moment, no one spoke. The sound of construction across the street filled the silence, a rhythmic hammering that almost matched my heartbeat. Mom finally sighed. We just wanted to help you make smarter decisions. Like the one you made for Lila. I asked. $12,000 for a dream she didn't earn. Not 1 cent for the daughter who actually built something. Mom's mouth trembled. We thought she needed it more. I nodded. You were right. She needed it. I needed belief. The truth hung heavy in the air. Lila's eyes flickered, guilt flashing through the arrogance for the first time. Mom took a step back, her voice smaller now. So what do you want from us? I looked at both of them, the woman who raised me, and the girl who replaced me, and said, nothing. That's the part you'll never understand. I already have everything I wanted. They left without another word. The sound of the door closing felt like a chapter sealing itself shut. Outside, the rain started again. But this time, it sounded like applause. For a few weeks, the silence was golden. No calls. No guilt trips. No more family visits disguised as interventions. I poured myself into my projects, refinishing wood floors, repainting walls, renting units to people who smiled when they signed their first lease. Sometimes I'd pass by Lila's new house, the one they'd proudly posted about online with captions like "Family teamwork makes dreams work." The paint had already begun to peel. The grass out front was patchy. And the dream home they'd bought with my parents' blessing was beginning to look exactly like their intentions, hollow. Then one evening, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Ms. Hale, a shaky voice asked. I'm calling from the credit union. Your sister's loan co-signer defaulted, And your parents mentioned you might assist. I almost laughed. No. That's not my responsibility. After the call, I stood by my window, looking at the skyline, each property of mine glowing faintly under the night lights. My empire wasn't large, but it was mine. Every brick, every receipt, every night I'd stayed up signing papers while they slept believing I was lost. The next morning, I received a message from Mom. Mom, we need to talk. It's about the house. I didn't reply. Hours later, she sent another. Mom, your father is furious. The bank might take Lila's place. You could stop it. Kid. That word had power. Once, I would have leapt to fix everything just to hear we're proud of you. But this time, I didn't move. Instead, I opened my laptop and renewed the lease on my first property, the small apartment that had started it all. I didn't save Lila's house. I saved mine. That night, as thunder rolled through the city, my phone buzzed one last time. Lila, you let them lose everything. I stared at her words until they blurred into nothing. Then I typed, slowly, no. I just stopped paying for everything. I didn't hit send. Some truths don't need delivery. They echo loud enough in silence. A month passed before I heard from them again. Then, one quiet Sunday morning, a letter arrived, handwritten, creased at the edges. The envelope smelled faintly of Mom's perfume, the same one she used to wear when she tucked me in before she learned how to compare. Inside, her words were shaky, uncertain. We didn't realize how small we made you feel. Your father and I were scared you'd fail, and maybe we convinced ourselves that keeping you down was protecting you. We were wrong. Lila's house is gone, and so is her marriage. Maybe that's our lesson, what's built on favoritism never lasts. But what you've built, Rowan, it's solid. We proud. Truly. I hope one day you'll forgive us. I read it twice. Then I folded it neatly and placed it beside my fifth deed, the one with my full name printed in bold ink. The silence in the room was soft, not empty. Forgiveness, I realized, doesn't need words. It just needs distance. That afternoon, I visited one of my tenants, a young single mom named Carla who had just signed her first lease. She hugged the keys like they were gold. I didn't think I'd ever get a place like this, she whispered. I smiled. Neither did I, once. As I walked back to my car, the ivy on the duplex walls shimmered in the breeze, alive, persistent, unbothered by who noticed. It had become my quiet motif through it all, growth without applause. Later that night, I drafted a short reply to Mom. Thank you for the letter. I hope Lila finds her way. I already found mine. I didn't send it right away. I let it rest in my drafts like the closure it was, silent, earned, patient. Then I stepped out onto my balcony. The city lights stretched endlessly below, and for the first time, they didn't feel like competition, just proof that everyone shines in their own corner. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I was the foundation they never believed I could build. And that was enough.